Hello and welcome to the Wisdom Audio online learning series. Today we're going to talk about how to set up internal crossovers on the Wisdom Audio SC-2 and SC-3 system controllers for systems that are in stereo, or maybe you've got a multi-room application or whole house audio and you've only got a stereo feed, left and right full range, coming into your system controller, but you want to add a subwoofer into the room. Our system controllers are very versatile and allow you to do that, and we're going to teach you how in this particular training session. I always want to remind everybody that you can always go to wisdomaudio.com and check out lots of information, for example, on the SC controllers like we're talking about today. Scroll to electronics under products, and there you can see the system controllers. We've got a gallery that's got lots of different images from internal and external, and then also other resources. System controller information sheet, current draw and BTU information. We've also got the RS-232 information as well as the owner's manual. With that, we're going to hop right into our speaker wizard. So we're already logged into our system controller. I've already configured the system, so I have a single zone, my stereo room. I have a left and a right input from my feed, wherever that may be coming from. And then on my output, I'm taking my left to my left, my right to my right, and then I created a subwoofer output, which we've done in a separate video already, from my left and right input. Now I'm into my speakers. What's really nice about the system controller SC2 and SC3 is not only do we have all the Wisdom loudspeakers in our drop-down menu, but we also have generic active, generic passive, and also generic subwoofer profiles loaded in as well. The advantage of that is that you can use a system controller by Wisdom Audio with any brand of loudspeaker or any system that you have, which gives you a lot of flexibility from a calibration standpoint, setup, multi-room, multi-zone, all kinds of cool things that you can do and use anybody's loudspeakers. So here we've got a generic passive for our left and right channels, and a generic subwoofer. The one thing I want to remind everybody that's very important is, say you've got a music room, 2 speakers in your subwoofer, and there's a big glass window. Well, of course, we know that's not ideal for acoustics, so you've got a nice heavy curtain that hangs down over that you can open and close. What the system controllers allow you to do is have multiple calibrations. You can have 4 calibrations in the different presets, and the reason I'm saying this is that when you set up a crossover for your speakers, you have to load that into each preset that you're going to do a calibration with. The crossover setup and the equalization that we do in here is not global. It's by preset. So we're going to do 2 presets today. We're going to do preset 1 and preset 2. So what I've done is I've clicked on my advanced controls. I'm going to start with the left speaker, generic passive output number 1. Click on advanced controls, and this brings up another menu system right here. Here's where you can see the frequency response output to that generic passive loudspeaker, which has no crossover, no equalization put into it yet. So what I want to do is I want to create a high-pass filter for my loudspeaker. And that's where you click on shape and you click on the select PEQ type, and we're going to create a high pass second order Butterworth filter. Typically we're going to go right at 80 Hertz. The nice thing about this is it's adjustable, so if you want to make this higher or lower, you can do that. You can also always click on the bypass and see what it looks like with or without the crossover network that you've just applied. This instance, it's a second order, so that's 12 dB per octave. You can see from 80 Hertz. At 40 Hertz, we are exactly 12 dB down. Now, if I've got a speaker that I know will play down to 80, but I want a little bit steeper of a shelf in there, I could double this by just doing another exactly the same thing. So I type in a high-pass filter, 80 Hertz, and now you can see that at 40 Hertz, I'm 24 dB down. So I've doubled that slope. The nice thing about this is that it's adjustable, and once you run your measurements in your calibration or whatever tools you're using to measure the room with before you actually do a calibration, you'll see if there's any weird things going on at the crossover point between the high frequency speakers and the low frequency subwoofers, and you may have to make some adjustments. Maybe you take out the second slope and just use the first slope at 12 dB per octave right here. So we'll just leave that at the 12 dB per octave right now and bypass this. The next thing I'm going to show you to make this a little bit simpler is we're going to create a linked EQ. The linked EQ is great because if you make a change in here on a linked EQ, even if it's in preset 2, it will make the change in preset 2 for you, or 3 or 4 or wherever the presets are. That is global. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to a linked EQ, but I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to say stereo left and right. That's what I'm going to name the system here, or this preset, and I'll show you why in a moment. So now I'm done. So I have my stereo left and right preset built into my linked EQ. Now I'm going to do my right channel, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. However, I'm going to convert it to a linked EQ. So if I pop this up in my drop down, I see stereo left and right. If I click on that, it will automatically load in the same thing that I just did for the first channel up top. This works great. It's really useful if you have a multi-channel system that's got lots of speakers, maybe a whole bunch of surround channels, or maybe you're doing distributed audio and you've got 6 different rooms and each room has got a pair or whatever. It's very handy for that because you can, just link the EQs and pop up the drop-down menu and it will put that stuff in for you right there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a crossover to blend with that on my subwoofer. Same thing. I click on Advanced Controls. It pops up this EQ filter box right here. And you can see that on my subwoofer, there's already a generic curve loaded in, which is a 4th order Linkwitz-Riley crossover at 80 Hertz. If I want to make that a little bit steeper maybe to blend in, again, I'll just use a low pass 2nd order Butterworth, put this in at 80 Hertz, and you can see how that steepens that up. Again, if I hit bypass, I can see exactly what that's doing. Now, if I create another preset, I can rename this, and we'll call it generic sub crossover, just like that. Done. Now I'm going to save my changes, and remember, as I mentioned before, when you go through the different presets, which is different Dirac calibrations is what the presets will do. So I've got a EQ curve programmed in here for preset number 1 with the windows and the shades closed, but now on preset number 2, you can see what's happened is everything goes back to the original settings. Now the easiest way to do this is simply click on Convert to Linked EQ, and I pull up my stereo left and right. Boom, just like that. Convert to Linked EQ, stereo left and right, and subwoofer. I'm going to go down here and say generic sub crossover. That's really all that's involved. Now I've got a low pass crossover and a high pass crossover for all 3 of my speakers, both of my presets. The other thing that you can do at this point is if you want to rename these presets, so I'm going to call this preset curtain open, and I'm going to rename this preset curtain closed. Now I've got 2 different presets, and the other great thing about this, now let's say I go back to my first preset and say that I want to add in a little bit of a filter here. We're going to put in a peaking filter, maybe at 4,500 Hertz, because I saw that there was a strange anomaly there when I ran my tests, my pink noise through the system. So by doing this, I can make an adjustment. Say it's a little bit hot in there, so now I've got a fairly wide bandwidth, and I've lowered that by 3 dB. What's cool about it is if I'm in that same stereo left and right EQ filter, you can see that the same filter was applied to each one of those. If I save this change and I go to curtain open, as long as I'm on that same stereo left and right, that new filter has been applied to that as well. It's a really useful tool when you're doing a lot of rooms and a lot of speakers. Typically, if you're doing a simple stereo system, you probably don't need to link them, but it works really well when you're doing a whole bunch of loudspeakers. One disclaimer I want to add at the end here is that before you start doing any saves or calibrations in your presets, you want to make sure that everything has been cleared out. Sometimes you can open up a preset that had nothing done, you think had nothing done, but it may have had a prior calibration put into it, or there might have been some Dirac delays and settings put into it. If you hit the reset on that, it will reset the name, and it will also reset any pre-programmed stuff that you did. For example, this particular crossover and a little bit of EQ that we put in there, if I say reset, it's going to take out everything that was in there, and I'm going to confirm that. And you can see that we have now taken all that out. The nice part is, though, if you did that by accident and I still have my second preset, I can go back to my convert to linked EQ, and there's my stereo left and right, my stereo left and right, and my subwoofer, generic sub crossover. So I can put that right back in. I can rename this back to, I can rename this one back to curtain closed. And we're all done.